Welcome everyone to our second session of Expert Insights. We are very happy for everyone to join us. And we all hope that you had a great start of the 2022. Expert Insights is hosted by ExEd Hub, OSUN ExEd Hub at Central European University. And we are basically committed to providing professional development opportunities for leaders, for aspiring change makers, and for those underserved in the communities, but also to those who need specific skills to advance either in their careers or in their professional lives. Today, our session will focus on honest leadership and how that drives sustainable transformation. And this workshop will be delivered to us by Bernhard Reingruber. Before we kick off this session, I will give you some housekeeping notes so that you know how to participate. Basically, throughout the session, feel free to submit any question you may have for Bernhard. And the best way to do so is to do it in the chat, and we will collect those questions. Or if you remember it, of course, save it for the Q&A session. And then Bernhard will try to address as many questions as possible at the end of the session so that he can go in depth and explain himself even better. Please note that this session is recorded and we will share the link to the session with you sometime after the event. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful speaker, Bernhard Reingruber, who is an honesty coach, a leadership and a trainer coach. And actually, after he has completed his studies, he has joined Teach for Austria as a fellow initially, then as a coach or trainer, and finally as a regional director. And afterwards, he combined at least three of his passions, which are purpose-driven management, mindfulness, and conscious leadership, into his own story, created Honest Lead, where he offers programs and workshops that help aspiring change makers make change in their lives and in their careers. Now, without further ado, I'm passing the word to Bernhard, who will guide us through this wonderful session.
Oh, great, Maya. Thank you. I appreciate you for the introduction. That sounds impressive when you say it. Thanks. Yeah, I notice a bit of tingling in my hands and in my face, warmth in my face. Bit sweaty hands. I think I'm nervous seeing all of you on the screen and also excited about the session that we will have today together. And seeing your screens, I make myself especially nervous with Andrea being here and Michael being here. And I imagine you know how that comes. Michael will lead a workshop that I'll be at the coming weekend, and Andrea is a former colleague at Teach for Austria. So yeah, I'm happy and excited that you're here. And before we start, I think the session today, I want it to be mostly about you getting some kind of practice of how honesty could show up in your life, basically. So one part of the honest leadership thing. And for that, I would want to start with a short grounding with you. So wherever you are, and if it's possible where you are, basically, I invite you to put both of your feet on the ground for a moment. And if it's okay for you to also close your eyes for a couple of moments. And bring attention to the soles of your feet right now. What do you notice in the soles of your feet in that very moment? Is there maybe warmth or coolness? Notice any sounds that are echoing. Let them go as well. And get back to your feet. Maybe there is pressure that you can notice. For some, there might be movement. And then release your attention from your feet and see what else can you notice in your body right now. What are the sensations in your body right now? Maybe there is constriction, the heaviness, could be warmth, expansion, maybe tingling. Maybe there's pulsating sensations in your body. Just notice and don't evaluate, don't judge where the noticings come from, where the sensations come from. Just notice them. And check what is going on in your body right now. And then lastly, let us take one deep breath together. Breathe in and release with a sigh. Really make a sigh when it's possible where you are right now. And do it one more time. Breathe in. And all right. Then open your eyes and get back to the call. Welcome again from my side. I do this practice mostly for myself and also for you as a first introduction into what honesty actually is about. That's 1/3 of all the stuff that we can notice about ourselves, basically the sensations in our body. And honesty, to me, we will come to it a bit later in more detail, is first and foremost bringing whatever you can notice in any given moment in congruence with what you're saying about it. So you're not coming up with a sales pitch about what it is that you can notice in your mind and in your body and outside, but you're reporting out loud what it is that you can notice. That's one definition of honesty, and I'll get to it a bit later. Maybe first about me, Bernhard Reingruber. The introduction was already too favorable, so I put in a couple of more juicy, maybe not so favorable details. I judge myself, apart from having come up with Honest Leadership and founding that and having worked with Teach for Austria for some time, I also judge myself as a recovering nice guy, which you can sometimes see with my smile. So it's my social smile. I sometimes smile when I try to look friendly or overdo honesty. Overdo honesty maybe as well. But overdo nervousness. And that's also part of what we are talking about when talking about honest leadership. It's about vulnerability and sharing stuff about yourself that you would otherwise not necessarily share. and have it out in the open, not driving your behavior, but having it out there in the open for others to see it. And let them take care of how they want to react to it, rather than be in your mind about, oh, should I hide this part? Should I hide that part? Should I avoid this part, etc., etc. Yeah. So that's a crucial part. I became a radical honesty trainer. The primary intention back then was not to combine it with leadership and to be like a radical honesty coach. The initial idea of mine, like some 5 years ago, was to get better at talking to women. And I smile and feel warmth in my face. I'm still a bit ashamed when I share it. And that is what brought me into the work. And it brought me to sign up for this crazy 8-day-long workshop called Radical Honesty. Finding myself in a like mansion in Italy with 16 other weird people, being radically honest for a week. And the original intention of like being better to talking to women, well, it faded into the background quite quickly, because on the one hand, of course, it's about sharing attraction and sharing what you like about somebody else. But there is so much more once we start getting honest. And that is what kept me in the practice, and that sustained the whole journey for the years to come. And after a couple of years, I was certified as a radical honesty trainer. And together with the conscious leadership work that I did within my previous organization's international network, I combined it to found Honest Lead. And that's basically my journey. That's all about me that you will hear today, except if you ask, of course. But now that I said a few words, I want to start basically with showing you a couple of ideas. First, how I come to think of honesty as such a crucial practice for organizations and for leadership as we have it today, and then get into an exercise as well. So I will share my screen if I can. Yes, I can. Great. I will not ask you whether you can see my screen, because you will just tell me if you don't. So honest leadership for sustainable transformation. Why for sustainable transformation? I imagine that if you want to change anything in this world, first, you have to start with yourself. And if it's not rooted in any kind of honesty, in like basically in playing games, then also change or transformation in this context is not working. It's basically the fundamental building block of anything that could be sustainable in the long run. That's the sustainable part to me. We could talk about that much more, and I don't want to start a philosophical discussion today, so I rather go into the topic a bit more. To me, honesty and honest leadership is basically about this image. You can see it here. It's the elephant in the room that is so not acknowledged in our meeting rooms, in our relationships sometimes as well, that he himself has to go to therapy. Like, oh, nobody acknowledges me. Damn, how do I get acknowledged? And that's one part of what I'm talking about. The second part is this one here. When I'm talking about honesty, it's always also about transformation. It's about a perspective shift in the moment. While you might have your judgments and ideals and ideas about how the world should work and has to work and etc., etc., the moment you express yourself honestly to somebody else, usually what happens is there are different views. And the practice of sharing honestly is a practice of changing perspectives in that sense as well. So yeah, those are two things. The most important developmental work that I see, and also close to organizations, comes from Robert Keegan, that ties in with what I want to share. And basically he found, with a couple of other developmental psychologists from Harvard, that in most organizations, almost everybody is doing a second job that nobody is paying them for, and that is pretending, basically covering their weaknesses, trying to look their best, managing impressions, being like impressive and avoiding looking bad. And that's costing organizations and teams and lives eventually a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of nerves, a lot of money eventually as well, which isn't always so visible, but it's there, I would say. And the second thing I want to show you around models is this one here, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And it hinges on the basic premise, that trust is the basis for everything else when it comes to teamwork. If you don't have trust, you don't have conflict. If you don't have conflict, you don't get to real commitment that holds in the face of like troubles, or maybe in the face of a pandemic, whatever you have. And if you don't have a commitment, you don't have accountability. So people are not really holding each other accountable. And if you don't have that, basically you don't have results. And everything starts from trust. So, and how do you get trust? Trust isn't established by saying, okay, from now on, and I experienced that myself, and Lydia and Andrea, you might remember, I don't know whether you have been in our organization at the time, but I remember one instance where somebody we three know said basically, okay, from now on, we just have to trust each other. That's it. And that's not how you establish trust. That is basically a wishful command, I would say. You establish trust by being vulnerable yourself, by going first. And by going first, you eventually stumble into conflict. You don't have much choice usually. And so on and so on. You know, you're going up the pyramid basically. And what my practice and honest leadership is mostly about is about this kind of like trust, conflict, and commitment. That's what's showing up in the workshops and in the coachings I do. At the last concept I want to share with you, like as a frame, basically, is this one here from Simon Sinek, who you might know. Basically, on one axis, performance, and on the other, trust. And what we see lots of times in organizations is that we have people who are very high on trust, but very high on performance, but very low on trust. And usually those people get promoted. Usually those people, and not in all organizations, but in a lot of organizations, those people get promoted because they're like the performers, and everybody's, oh, wow, he or she is performing. But those are also toxic team members, those who don't give so much about how the others do, who don't engage in like team efforts, but they're mostly driven by, let's get something done. And to me, it's honest leadership is an inquiry into these two dimensions. Might it be a bit more sustainable to have mid-performing and high trust? You can answer the question yourself. I answer it with yes. That's why it's green, I think. It's a rhetorical question almost. I'm amusing myself right now. But yeah. And so those are like organizational level, team level, and personal level, is that I judge that under the disguise of professional behavior, we have trained ourselves to let our aliveness at home and not take it with us to work. Basically, we are professionals, right? And that has individual like costs to the individual, basically. And I think that has to do with an overemphasis. Maybe some of you know this model. It's Ken Wilber's integral model. And you basically see on the one hand side, everything that is inside, and on the other side, everything that is outside of myself or a group. And on the other axis, like me and we. And basically the whole outside realm of behavior, methods, skills, processes, structures, that's a lot of the times where people in organizations put their emphasis. That's because we can easily control them, or more easily control them. Let's call it like that. What we very often underestimate is things like culture, and especially mindsets and values. And I think it could also look differently. That's my vision with Honest Lead, is that we, by 2051, have organizations that are healing and productive communities for unfolding for the common good. Or in other words, it's like, hell yeah, it's Monday, and I can get to work with a couple of people that I have a close relationship with, that I can share with whatever is going on with me, and with who I can create something that is actually valuable for our society as well, not just for some people's profits. So yeah, that's the vision, and for that I think it needs a broader view also towards culture and mindsets and values. And that's why I created Honest Leadership. Basically, that is a combination of conscious leadership, of radical honesty that I was talking about today a bit, and the whole new work bubble where we talk a lot about purpose and self-management and the likes. So today we will delve a bit more into radical honesty, and I will also have you experience what it could mean to be a bit more honest in reality, in this reality. Okay, so radical honesty. And if you are a bit like some other people that I've met before, when you hear radical honesty, you think about this year, about going out and throwing judgments at people. Like, I don't like what you're wearing today, and the idea that you presented us with in our meeting yesterday was completely crap. Sorry, I'm swearing, but I'm honest, like I can justify that. Okay, that's, to me, is brutal honesty. That is a different form of honesty. That's brutal honesty, and it has nothing to do with what I'm talking about here. Basically, radical honesty is much more comparable to this one here, and that might also not help very much. I learned in a couple of years back, a friend of mine told me, if you can't convince them, confuse them. And that might be one of the strategies. But basically what radical honesty is about is those two things. So radical, coming from radix, the root of your awareness, basically. So the root of your awareness, and what can you be aware of? You can be aware of three, basically, levels. So you can be aware of what's going on inside of you in any given moment, your bodily sensations, as we experienced in the beginning. You can be aware of what's going on outside of you with your senses, with your eyes, with your ears, with your touchy fingers, etc. And you can notice what is going on in your mind right now. So those 3 levels: inside, outside, and upside down. And that's basically the horse to me. So the horse is inside, it's kind of outside, it's got its head outside, and it's a bit crazy, it's upside down. And that is what our mind sometimes does. Comes up with all kinds of ideas and relationships that are not necessarily always, or don't necessarily always have a lot to do with what is actually going on. Okay, and so you have those 3 levels, and you notice what's going on those 3 levels, and then you talk about it as if a video camera recorded it. So no sales pitch, but reporting about what is going on for you in the moment. It's reporting and not thinking about what I can say. And you usually do that in a group setting. So you get together with people and you share what's going on for you in the moment. And then somebody gets triggered and gets angry, for example, and then they share what's going on for them in the moment. So that's what it is basically about. And why would you do that? Because usually when you have an experience and you try to avoid it, so for example, the example with anger, so I don't know, maybe a colleague of yours sat in a meeting with you and he said something to you that you didn't like, or he said, maybe, I don't like your idea. And you noticed a bit of tension in your belly. You noticed your eyebrows frowning a bit. You looked at him, but what you said in the moment was, oh yeah, I completely understand. I agree. So that's probably not really congruent with your experience in the moment, but that is what we very often do. And if you resist your experience, it persists. That is a quote that is attributed to Carl Jung. He actually said, which is not so catchy, I judge, but that's the actual quote, is what you resist will not only persist, but will grow in size. So basically the anger that you don't express in the moment, or the sadness or the happiness or whatever have you, that you don't express in the moment grows. So the next day, you probably look at this colleague of yours a bit, or maybe you even start having more conflicting opinions on his ideas. And the week after, you might get into maybe not even inviting him to the team meeting anymore. And in 3 weeks, you might talk to your boss about his performance, and I'm not sure if he's at the right place. So usually that's the example of anger. Usually it grows and the distance grows when we don't express things. Yeah. And if you suppress or deny your experience, which is what I just described, basically another word for that is lying. If you have an experience in your body, you notice bodily sensations, you notice your something on the outside, but your mind tells you, maybe not the right place, not the right time, not the right blah, blah, blah. Then you basically suppress or deny your experience. And that is where very often lying comes in. So that was a lot of talking. I noticed my mouth dry. I want to share this last thing with you. That's the whole like a very accurate medical graph of what is going on in our system. So basically that's a depiction of our brain, and what it sometimes comes down to basically is those 3 systems that you can see on the right hand side. Basically our amphibian brain, basically, then our mammal and our mammalian brains, basically, that already know a bit about emotion and the expression of emotion, are being held captive sometimes by our neocortex, the youngest part of our brain. So we tell ourselves stuff like, that's not the right time, as I said before. Or maybe if I say that now, that might have consequences in our next team sure fix or something like that. And we hold back. And that's where the problem starts. And there is a great book on that if you're interested more in how that works. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. So in the worst case, basically, this dynamic develops into actual trauma. In the least bad, so to say, case, it's a dysfunctional team dynamic or a dysfunctional work relationship. Yeah. Okay, so now enough of talking from my side. I want to hear from you. And what I'm curious about is, what do you think is the challenge with honesty? What are we so afraid of when it comes to speaking up, when it comes to being honest? Yeah, what are we so afraid of? And just unmute yourself. We're not that many. We can manage, I think. Maya.
I guess.
Yeah, hello. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Maya.
Maybe me. Sorry.
Oh, both. We have two Mayas
on the call.
Right. Yeah.
No, I mean, thank you for this presentation. I thought about risks of being honest, especially in the workplace, is that maybe you can be perceived, as too informal, oversharing, too weak. And what if you are the only one, being like that, and then should you continue being like this? Or, if you see the dynamics is more or less more not so genuine or not so authentic ways of communications, then it's kind of a challenge to keep it or not.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Maya. Who else wants to share?
I'm happy to go ahead. For me, it's about being punished for being honest and dealing with the consequences, because some people, although they say that they appreciate honesty, they really don't if it's something that they don't want to hear. And very often it happened in my professional life that I ended up being punished for it in one way or another. No promotion, no, advancement, no, or even being outed from the team in a way,
Thank you, Maya.
Well, I think that basically.
We have some sound echo here. Do you want to try it again, Andrea? Yeah. No. Okay.
One last try.
Yes. No, it works.
Well, I think basically we all carry these little or big dark places around, and we think that, or I in my opinion, we think that it's like this dark secret, and if we really start showing what's really inside of us, then we will not be loved in a way. So in a way we're trying to prevent people from really seeing us because we have this fear inside of really being seen and then being rejected, basically.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. What else? Michael,
Okay, so now it's my turn. Beside the fear of being rejected, there is also the fear of being accepted in a way. Like there is a fear of closeness, and when I show myself, I invite closeness, and there are parts of me that are very, 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 very irrationally afraid of closeness, and that's that's far away from my logical. It's more an overwhelming experience. It's what makes my voice a little bit like this when I talk to the computer in the security of my living room.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you for sharing that. Thank you, Michael. Great. Sheila.
Yes, I just wanted to share with you that what I really learned throughout my long work experiences, that I became much more honest as I grew better with myself. So when I sort of started to feel that I'm fine as I am, then I started to feel easier to show it to anyone else. So the better terms I became with myself, the more honest I became at my workplace. This is experienced.
Great. So what would you say is, what would have been your fear before you got better with yourself? Or maybe even now, maybe there is.
I think I had all kinds of fears. So I said that I'm not good enough. I'm too young, then too old. So I always had some fears. And when I could work myself through all these fears one by one, and then I just realized that everybody's making mistakes and sometimes people are slow. So there were so many little things, I can't even list all of them. And then I realized that I'm fine as I am. And then somehow things became easier, and the more honest I became, the better the others accepted me. So it worked both ways.
Yeah, interesting how you say it. The more the others accepted you. And I'm curious whether that's mostly you accepting yourself and finding reflections basically in other people.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. I wanna get to one more fundamental level. So I told you before, radical honesty is about the root of your awareness, and maybe there is an idea that there is some fear that is even behind all of what you shared, and all those are relevant. But what could be the fear that is even beyond like those fears that you shared just now? Andrea, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to make you go through this again.
Sound works well.
Okay. I think it's maybe fear of death, because when we're really honest, and then the groups, like this goes like beyond million years ago, like when we're really honest and we don't fit into the group, then if the group shuts us out, it means death. So I think that's why we try to adapt and lie.
That's a great answer. I've never had that answer so far. And I imagine there is a more, I think that's a very philosophically interesting answer. I haven't considered that one. And I imagine still there is one that is a bit more in the realm of the living. That is beyond. We're social beings, I read in the chat.
Well, when we were smaller or very, very small, and we had to, we learned that it's not okay if we show ourselves, like we don't get the attention we need for survival from parents and caretakers. So our systems learned that it's very, very dangerous to show ourselves. And this system is activated when we get close to this expression. And I also think that it's connected with what Andrea said, that we're social beings. And so it's also very, very deeply socially rooted, but psychologically rooted. I guess that's one of the main topics.
Absolutely. That's almost how I would put it. I show you one more time my screen. and share with you like what I would see as, in radical honesty terms, or in honest leadership terms for that matter, I would say what we are actually so afraid of is of experiencing too many sensations in our body that we label as negative. And that has a lot to do with, Michael, what you shared before, like overwhelm kind of as well. Too many sensations in our bodies that we label as negative. Because at the end of the day, what there is sensations in my body, and the interpretation of it is a different thing. But that's where we are at, basically. So we for example, things happen in our lives, or we notice stuff in our body. We notice sensations in our body. So things happen in our body, and we have a story about what those things mean. And that's the same with your own life. If you look back in your own life, usually events in your life occur, and you make meaning out of those events. And it's the meaning with which we don't always feel quite happy. So very often we are around here, we are here, we have lots of ideas of interpretations about what is going on right now, and if that is right or good or wrong or bad or whatever. And sometimes we are here, but very often we are very rarely, actually, we are here. We are in the realm of noticing, just noticing what is going on in any given moment. And to me, like, also most of the fears that you shared are, or maybe not most of the fears that you shared today, but mostly when people talk about their fears, it's in the realm of story, of what could go wrong and might go wrong and eventually someday could go wrong, and what you heard of other people that might go wrong. And very rarely are there actual experiences, concrete experience of that. And so that what we do usually is make an experience and see whether that is, whether those bad things actually happen. So we get together in a group and we share what we are angry about, we share what we are sad about, we share those things that you would normally rather want to avoid or hold back, basically, and see what actually happens. And rather more often than not, people are surprised about what actually happens when they talk about the things that they sometimes don't want to talk about. So yeah, that's basically a short also idea about where we are coming from when we do the work we do. I want to have one experience with you and see how that is for you to be a bit more open and honest than you might usually be. Maybe it's not a challenge at all. So I'd like us to do an exercise, but for that exercise, I would need us first to take 2 agreements. And the first one basically is of confidentiality. So if you stay on this call, then you agree to be to keep confidentiality. And that's mostly to create an illusion of control about what is being said here. We don't actually know whether people are keeping their agreement, but we can trust if people are actually agreeing to what we are proposing here. Are there any questions to the agreement of confidentiality? Okay, so then I would like you to have a short sign. Do you agree to keep confidentiality? Yes, yes, yes. So what about Paul and Carmel and Marina and Christina? Yes, yes, Paul as well. Margaret. Uh-huh. 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 Okay. So they're either not listening, so that would make the the agreement that would make it complete for me, or not agreeing. So the other way around, all those who have not yet held up their thumb, if you don't agree, I would ask you to leave the call now. That's probably a better way to put it. Margaret says hi. Is hi a yes?
Sorry, you just caught me right at the wrong time. I had to let the dog out the door. I heard my name when I walked back into the room. Sorry.
All right. Cool.
Did you say something? Sorry, excuse me. I didn't want to.
Yes, we're making a commitment to confidentiality, and I wanted to know whether you agree.
Needless to say, sorry about that. Literally, excuse me. You just caught me really at the wrong moment.
So that's a yes?
Yes, confidentiality. Needless to say, of course.
Okay. All right.
Excuse me.
Cool. So, and the second agreement that I would want to make with you is I agree to be honest. And being honest in that sense is, of course, answering truthfully when you're being asked something. That's the one definition we can all or mostly agree to. But there is a second one that is not holding back not withholding anything that could be important for the others. And in the exercise that we will do, it would be like, something's coming up and I think, oh, no, I don't share that. I share something more polite or something like that. Okay, so do you agree to be honest for the remainder of the session? Yes. Paul, Carmelo, yes. Great, Paul, yes.
Bernhard, just a technical issue. We're recording. Would you like us to stop the recording?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Appreciate you for asking. That would be better. Okay. And for the exercise, for you, like that you have to jump off, then thank you for being here. But I would invite all of you, if you have a few minutes longer, so maybe until 10 past or 15 past, to stay a bit on.
I would then take my opportunity to leave and to say thank you very much. The next
Yes.
time I will give you my absolutely full and undivided attention. So mea culpa, excuse myself to the group, and I will continue to track the next time I will join also. So thank you very much. Very interesting snapshot, but very, very interesting approach. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you,
Great-
Margaret, for joining
Great that
us.
you were here today.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So I'm curious how that experience was for you just now. Sharing, hearing other people share. What happened?
Almost everything was relatable for me.
Yeah. Who else felt like that?
Me too. I wanted to agree to that, and also that I actually thought of a lot of things that were said that I thought of saying that maybe, but then thought maybe not because of things you said. We don't know each other. Maybe it's too honest or too emotional, maybe, or too private. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was kind of, I noticed myself maybe censoring even myself a little bit, which I found interesting to notice.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Great noticing there. What else?
For me, for example, at another session, we learned that it's very important that I'm not thinking about my task in this exercise, but I'm giving full attention to the others. So I try to do that I'm not thinking about what I will say, but I listen carefully to the others. That's a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, because you were thinking about what you could say?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Because someone else said something very similar, which I wanted, and then I had to rewire. And
and you came up with a story
With
that you
another
should
idea,
say
yeah.
something else, and
Yeah.
which wasn't the rule, so you could have said exactly the same 3
Still,
times. Yeah,
some expectation, you see, I thought.
I get it. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Chilla. Maya.
I think it was also very liberating and refreshing. I mean, we're all strangers here. And here we are here with this exercise. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And what is even more wonderful to me, like I completely agree with what you shared, Maya. That's incredible. And the idea, like what comes to me is also that we talked a lot about fears and stuff, but what I experience usually during this kind of exercise is that it creates connection. And us sharing something openly and honestly is creating connection to some degree. It's limited to an hour today, a bit longer, but yeah, that is what frequently happens. Maya, you're the last person to talk, except for me.
Yeah, I agree that it creates a connection with people. Some people you know, some people you don't know, but it creates connection because you know that everyone has something that they pretend sometimes, like everyone is sharing that, and then this gives you courage too. I mean, at least to me, it gives you courage to share, and that's why I think if you set it up like this and everyone shares and everyone can relate to each other, because there is no probably human that, I mean, you can try to be authentic and genuine most of your time, but probably there's no one in the world that sometimes doesn't pretend a bit. So then it even creates this experience of this fact. You feel this when you have this exercise. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maya. Thank you for sharing. Thank you all for sharing, and thank you for participating. To me, as I said, the exercise is a bit to show you what is possible also when you start getting a bit more honest about what is actually going on. So first of all, we see each other in other people. It's not that like we are the only ones who are a bit crazy and weird and I do this and you know like it's mostly a human condition doing that. And of course we haven't talked about all the things that might happen eventually when we get honest and more honest in real life. That's a bit a longer process, I think, than 1 hour, but it might have given you a glimpse of what can be possible in terms of connection, in terms of well, looking behind the fears that we sometimes have of either connection. We had the fear of connection as well as of rejection. So it's all of that. It's usually about intensity of what we perceive. And that's, I think, where I want to make a stop today. How does all of that tie in with leadership? So that's the great question that I have to answer in a bit in 1 hour. I think there is a lot of stuff to say about that. There is a lot of things around that. So if you're still curious, just stay around, maybe ask a few questions. I'm happy and willing to answer. The short answer is nothing happens in an organization or in a team if people don't get at least a bit uncomfortable. If everything's comfortable and cozy and everybody is agreeing, then there is something foul usually. Something's maybe not being talked about, and that's probably the core of it all. Yeah, I'm super happy that you all participated today. I would love to see you again in one of my workshops. In what we're doing this year especially is bringing this honesty practice and honest leadership into teams. So my newest offer is the honestly high-performing team, because high performance without honesty is to me, at least, it's not really possible. We're not talking about high performance if you leave out all the vulnerable connection trust stuff. So if you're interested, we're looking for pilot teams until the end of February, and after then you can book us for that workshop, of course. And also I do coaching, I do regular workshops, I do programs. I'd be happy to be connected via LinkedIn or whatever else you are willing to share about my programs. And with that, again, thank you. And I give back to Maya for the closing words.
Thank you, Bernhard. And thank you for this wonderful session. I think that it was very enjoyable for all of us. I would like to add here that Bernhard is so kindly offering 20% discount on participants of this session, who wish to explore his services more and explore further with him radical honesty and leadership. I'm sorry, I'm very honest here. My toddler is just next to me, so I apologize for that.
Great.
But apart from that, if you're willing to sign up with Bernhard, please stay in touch with him, connect with him, and mention to him that you visited this session. He will probably remember you, and you can take this further. I think it would be great opportunity now to address some questions if anyone has them.
Yeah.
So please, if you do have questions, be brave again and raise your hand and shoot.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you for hosting the space today as well, even with your toddler besides you.
Thank you.
Pretty good. Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions? We did have some throughout the session.
Chilla has a question.
Chilla.
Thank you. One question is that it very often happens in my experience that, let's say at my level, which is the middle level, we try to be honest and try to do that. But for example, the upper level in the company is not supporting that. So we don't get all the information and we don't see the whole picture very well. So we are misguided somehow. And then how can somehow work it on both ways, that we can convince the upper leadership to be honest?
Yeah, I get it. I get your question. And two things arise for me when I hear you talk. So the one is I always tell participants in my workshops that please don't get into this kind of work if you try to change other people. So if you're trying to change like your boss or the upper levels or your employees or whoever it is, then probably that's not the right thing for you. So it's very much a personal practice, except for, of course, if you do it in a team, then it becomes a team practice. Or if you do it in an organization, it becomes an organizational practice, of course. The second, more, I think, answer that might satisfy your curiosity a bit better is, well, first of all, through you being consistently honest with them, maybe expressing your anger at somebody for how they are dealing with information. And I acknowledge that's not possible immediately. That might be a process, and it might not be the full range of honest expression from day one. And that's also what I would not recommend. So I would recommend have small honesty experiments at first. Yeah. And then it's talking about the effects of dishonesty and like the costs of dishonesty to them. And those are numerous. So from like reduced motivation of the people, from hearing about their ideas that are being delegated down by other people who are in resistance with those ideas, like because they can't express it directly to them. Usually what happens is people talk in the cafeteria and say, did you hear he or she already, like they have a new idea about how and where the team and the organization should go. I'm not sure about that. Like there's lots of covert resistance usually, and that's a huge cost, for example. And there are many others, but I think that would be a bit too long for our conversation. So it would be talking about the costs and, of course, the benefits of being honest with each other.
Thank you. So sending small signals might work.
Yeah.
Honest feelings. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Maya.
There was a question in the chat pertaining to how to be honest when dealing with leaders and supervisors when power and status come in play.
Yeah. That's not yet a question. I don't get.
That was my question, so
Okay.
I'm happy to expand. So I feel that it often is the case that it's only in one direction, that leaders with power status think they are the only ones who are allowed to be honest in that direction, but don't accept honesty in the other direction.
They don't accept the honesty in the other direction.
Well, no, because then you may face repercussions for your honesty. Or it's very closed and restricted. Who gets to say what? Or who is heard? Who gets to even express their opinion? Things like that.
Well, again, it's a bit the thing about, like fighting against windmills. It's more like, as I said before, like don't get into the work if you want to change other people. So if people that you're working with are not yet ready, the only thing you can do basically is have small experiments, have small express your anger in a small way, express your wish also, what it is that you would want from them, for example. And I acknowledge it's a tricky thing with power differential. So if not all the people are willing to make themselves vulnerable, then it's a much more risky business for you if you're speaking truth to power, as is usual the case. I would still encourage you to, and it's a risky business, of course. That's the whole thing, speaking truth to power, and that I would suggest first getting more experience in your system, doing it with equals basically, or people where there is no power differential, basically experiencing what happens for you in those moments, because otherwise you're being even more triggered in those situations where there is a power differential. And the more experience you have with it, the more or the easier you can also stay present in the moment where there is somebody, at least not immediately in the moment, sharing as vulnerably as you are. And you can stay present and, for example, like stay in the conversation, like and say something like, I notice what you just shared. I notice tension in my belly. I'm angry at you for what you just shared, and I wanted you to be a bit more vulnerable with me as well. But that's very often only available to us when we have practiced it a bit. That's what I would say in short. And I acknowledge it's tough situation. Yeah.
There was one more question.
Yes.
That in the chat that related to gender roles. So basically, the gender player role in being honest, because women tend to be labeled as emotional if they're honest. Do you, from your experience and from your client's experience, perhaps?
Yeah. So from my experience, men and women are equally emotional. That's and sitting in workshops with lots and lots of people, usually it's, to me at least in my experience, it's very often I don't know if I can even compare it, but I have a story that men might be slightly like have more pent up emotions slightly than women, even though it's like around different issues. In an organization, being labeled as emotional or being labeled as, well, yeah, I don't have a good answer for you on that. I would, so that one of the key practices basically of the honesty work is distinguishing from what actually happens from the story you make about it. And I would get back and back again to what is actually happening in the moment, and staying present in the conversation. If you're getting overtly labeled, so somebody saying, you're just being emotional, then I would get angry again and express it, and maybe have some third party there as well. But it's, yeah, again, not an easy answer. I think the first and foremost thing is, getting experience yourself, so that you're not being entangled in stories in the moment, and enrolling others. Basically, the more you can be honest about things before like those tricky situations come up. So also about other stuff, where it's not so emotional and loaded, the easier it will be in those situations where it is tricky eventually.
Thank you, Bernhard,
Yeah.
for this answer. Any other questions, perhaps, from anyone else? No? All right. Bernhard, thank you again very, very much for this wonderful session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And I would just quickly like to share with you just one last thing. Sorry. As we're coming to an end with this session, basically we would like to invite you to our next session next month that is coming up every second Thursday of the month. And actually the next question will deal with how to get a seat at the table, but not just how to get a seat at the table, but also how to keep progressing in your career and how to keep developing and accelerating yourself for your professional success. And this will be delivered by the president of Professional Women Network of Vienna, Joy Medoš, who is also the founder and the chief executive explorer at the Leadership Explorer company that she runs. You're most welcome to join us. We'd love to have you, and we're looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernhard. This was wonderful as always.
Thank you.
I keep saying, I'll say it again, I love your stuff.
Great. Appreciate you for saying that, Lydia. Oh, and appreciate the heart. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Have a restful evening.
Yes, have a great evening, everyone. You deserve it. And you, Bernhard, get some rest.
Yes, same to you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Bye, Paul.